Hi everyone! In today's video, I wanted to show you how I did this fall design, but before we start, make sure that you prep well the nails, and I already done that. So now I'm going to put the form completely straight because in today's video, I'm going to be doing square shaped nails. This first nail, I'm going to be doing an ombre design between the color yellow and pink. And like you guys can tell, I'm going to start with the yellow acrylic. What I'm going to be doing here is the tip of the nail. And for today's video, I'm going to be doing pretty long nails. They're going to be longer than XL size. And I'm going to keep pushing this acrylic upwards until it gets in the upper half of the nail. And now that I have this first step done, I'm going to start applying the pink acrylic. And what I'm going to be doing here is that I'm going to be creating pretty liquid beads so I can mix both of the colors together. Like you guys can tell, I'm going to keep dragging the acrylic downwards until both of the colors melt. I feel like that's the most important part of doing ombre designs, is that we want to make sure that both of the colors kind of melt together so it can look realistic. I think this combination of yellow and pink looks really good. And now that I'm done doing this first nail, I'm gonna apply some pressure on the sides. You guys know that I like doing this step because I feel like it's going to make my nail look more natural. This second nail, I'm going to let it be more natural because here I'm going to be doing another design that I'm going to tell you later on in the video. But basically, I'm going to be creating this acrylic nail like I would usually do. I'm going to put the first bead between the natural nail and the form. And using my brush, I'm going to drag the acrylic downwards until I create this square shaped nail. What I do to make sure that the sides are as straight as possible is that I use the lines of the form as a guide. In that way, I know where I have to apply the acrylic, and the whole process is much easier for me. And now that I'm done creating the shape, I'm going to apply the last acrylic bead. And here what I'm going to do is that I'm going to make sure that the entire nail is well covered. This third nail is still going to be pretty simple, but the only difference is that I'm going to be using the pink acrylic that I used on the first nail. But before we start, I'm going to apply the form, and I'm going to make sure that it's symmetrical because I don't want this nail to end up being crooked. And now that I have that done, I'm going to start applying the acrylic the same way. I'm going to put the first bead between the natural nail and the form. And slowly, I'm going to drag the acrylic downwards. The way that I do this is that I do little taps on the acrylic and I kind of move it around wherever I want it to go. Now, I'm going to apply the last acrylic bead. What you have to make sure here is that the acrylic doesn't touch the cuticle or the skin, because what can happen is that can actually cause lifting. And this is how the third nail looks like. Now moving on to the last nail for this tutorial. Here I'm going to be doing another ombre design, but this time it's going to be a little bit different because it's going to be encapsulated. I'm going to be using two types of glitters, this yellow one and this kind of orange glitter. The first thing I'm going to do is create the tip just like I done earlier, and the way that I do this is that I use crystal clear acrylic and I do little bits and I put the glitter on top. In that way I can move it around and put it wherever I think it looks good. And I'm going to push it upwards until it's in the upper half of the nail. And now that I have that done, I'm going to apply the yellow glitter the same way. I'm just going to be putting it on top. I feel like this type of combinations of yellow and orange looks really good, and it's going to go very well for the fall time. And now I'm going to finish up doing this ombre design. I'm going to apply the same pink acrylic that I've been using. In the same way, I'm going to be creating pretty liquid beads, and I'm going to keep dragging it downwards until both of the colors melt together. You guys can tell, I applied the beads near the cuticle, but remember not to touch it. And to finish up, I'm going to encapsulate the glitter using the same crystal clear acrylic. Here, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to make sure that everything is well covered. And to finish up, of course, I'm still going to apply some pressure on the sides. Make sure that you don't miss this step. It's so important. And this is how these acrylic nails look like. They are not perfect, but that's why I always say that filing is one of the most important steps. When I file nails, I like to start by filing the sides, and since these are square shaped, I'm gonna put the file completely straight. And this is how the nails look like. Like you guys can tell, the sides look a lot more sharp now. Now I'm gonna start filing the surface, and to do that I'm gonna use my e-file, but if you guys want to, you can use a regular one. And here what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna file down these nails until they're pretty thin, and also I'm gonna make sure that there's no bumps left behind. And this is how it looks like. Now everything is done and we're ready to do the design. Before we start, I recommend you to clean off the nails because after filing, there's always going to be some dust left behind. And if we don't take that off, that can make our design look dirty. In this second nail, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create this type of sweater design. But before we do that, I'm going to apply the base color. I chose this neutral yellow. I tried to use colors that were not too vibrant, and now I'm gonna apply this top coat that leaves the nails looking matte, because on this second nail I wanted to have this matte effect, and this is how it looks like. Now we can start doing the sweater design. I'm gonna be using yellow gel paint because I want it to look more realistic. And also I'm going to be using this very thin nail art brush so it can be easier to create. What I'm going to be doing here is that I'm going to be creating these thin lines on the middle of the nail. And now that I have that done, I'm going to start creating the design that I'm going to put on the middle. Like you guys can tell, it's pretty simple. What you have to do is create 3 small straight lines that kind of go downwards. The most important part of doing this design is that you have to make sure that it's all symmetrical, because otherwise what can happen is that it can end up looking crooked. And now that I have this design done, what I'm going to do to make this nail look more realistic is that I'm going to be adding dots on the sides. And this is pretty simple. What I'm going to be doing is creating small dots all around it, but make sure that it's also symmetrical. I know that I'm saying that a lot, but that's very important to create this type of sweater designs. Otherwise what can happen is that it can end up looking like a mess. And like you guys can tell, to make this easier for me, I'm using this dotting tool. I recommend you to do the same thing. And this is how this sweater design looks like. We're not gonna cure it yet because I want it to look more matte and have this type of velvet feeling. So to that, I'm gonna be adding crystal clear acrylic, just the powder, and I'm gonna be adding it on top of it. And then I'm gonna cure everything for about 60 seconds. And this is how it ended up looking. I feel like it looks a lot more realistic now because everything is completely matte. And moving on to the third nail here, what I'm gonna do is actually a pretty simple design. It's also going to be this type of plaid shirt. And to do this, I'm gonna start by using this white gel polish, and I'm gonna do a pretty thick line on the right side of the nail. After that, I'm gonna cure it for about 30 seconds, and I'm gonna use this black gel paint. Here, what I'm gonna do is make these very thin lines, and also I'm gonna do one in the middle of the white line because I feel like it's going to make the design look more complete and just better. Remember to keep curing as you go because you don't want all the colors to mix together. And now I'm also gonna create this smaller line kind of near the tip of the nail. I'm gonna start with the white gel polish, and then I'm gonna go with the black gel paint, and I'm gonna do these very thin lines. And this is how it looks like, but I wanted to add something extra, so I'm gonna be using this dark blue gel polish. And what I'm gonna do here is that I'm gonna create another 2 lines, but it's kind of gonna be on the opposite sides. I know that the combination of yellow and blue can be a little bit strange, but I think that it looks really good for this design. And this is how these 2 nails ended up looking, but we're not completely done yet because what we have to do is add a little bit of top coat. And you guys know that this is my favorite part of doing ombre designs and encapsulated designs, because you can end up seeing how both of the colors melt, like you guys can tell over here. And what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna add this top coat on all these 3 nails. I'm not gonna be adding it on the second one because I want it to be matte. And what this is gonna do is that it's going to add a really pretty shine, but it's also going to protect the designs that we created. But before I cure these nails, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna add a few crystals because I felt like the design looked a little bit simple. And I'm gonna be using these ones that are this type of gold color. I'm not gonna add too many, I'm just gonna add these 3 ones. And now that I have this done, I'm gonna cure everything for 60 seconds. And this is how the final design ended up looking. I know that yellow is not really a color that we use too much during fall time, but I feel like the combination of the colors ended up looking good. I hope that you guys liked this tutorial. If you did, please subscribe and like this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!